They say the Grand Canyon is a monument to time, a vast chasm carved by wind and water, a cathedral of stone layers documenting hundreds of millions of years. But what if time isn't the only force that shaped it? What if the canyon holds secrets not of erosion, but of erasure, an ancient civilization buried not by nature but by design? In the spring of 1909, a man named G.E. Kincaid set off alone down the Colorado River. Officially, he was on an exploratory mission for mineral deposits, an assignment funded in part by the Smithsonian Institution. But unofficially, Kincaid had his own motivations. Rumors of strange formations and hidden chambers had reached his ears from old trappers and native guides. They spoke of tunnels too symmetrical to be natural, of echoes that didn't bounce back quite right, of strange lights flickering deep in the canyon at night. Kincaid wasn't your average adventurer. A veteran of countless expeditions across the American West, and a man deeply interested in lost civilizations, he had spent years chasing rumors. He believed, as a few quietly did at the time, that ancient cultures far older than the Anasazi once walked this land, and that their traces had been deliberately wiped from history. About 42 miles upriver from El Tovar Crystal Canyon, Kincaid noticed something peculiar. High above the riverbank, about 2,000 feet from the bottom of the canyon wall, was a sheer rock face, flat, discolored, and strangely symmetrical. He'd passed this section dozens of times before, but this time the sunlight struck it just right. Patterns emerged. Shadows hinted at a hollow. He felt it more than saw it. With effort and rope, he scaled the cliff. What he found there would change the course of his life, and for a brief moment, threatened to change history itself. At the top was an entrance, a narrow, rectangular hole, half covered by sediment and overgrown roots. But it was no cave mouth. It was clean, carved, as if cut by tools. The opening was about 4 feet wide and 7 feet tall. With a lantern in one hand and a revolver in the other, Kincaid stepped inside. The air was dry and dead. The walls were perfectly smooth. Every 10 feet, small niches had been carved into the rock, perhaps for torches or relics. After walking for what he estimated was several hundred feet, the tunnel widened into a chamber, then another, and another. He passed through rooms the size of cathedrals, and others no larger than a closet. Each space seemed to serve a purpose. Some held stone tables with etchings, others contained shelves carved directly from the stone, upon which rested earthenware, copper tools, and strange ornaments that shimmered like they'd been polished only yesterday. But it was the figures that shook him. Lined against the walls and alcoves were mummies, dozens, all male, wrapped in a bark-like cloth, preserved in a manner unlike anything Kincaid had seen from Native American burial traditions. They were tall, some over 7 feet, and their skulls were elongated, as if by artificial cranial deformation, or perhaps something else entirely. Next to each figure was a small stack of items, tools, weapons, what appeared to be personal belongings. In a central chamber, he discovered a statue that defied classification. Seated cross-legged on a plinth was a figure unlike anything from Egyptian, Mesopotamian, or even Asian traditions. It had the posture of the Buddha, the facial structure of an Egyptian pharaoh, and the attire of something alien. In its hands it held 2 orbs, one black, one white. The air around the statue felt different, charged, like standing in the eye of a storm. Kincaid marked the cave's location, took notes and photographs, and collected several small artifacts. When he returned to civilization, he immediately contacted his sponsor, Professor S.A. Jordan of the Smithsonian Institution. Jordan, a respected archaeologist with ties to Washington, D.C., arranged a full expedition within weeks. The team returned with pack mules, equipment, and secrecy. According to Kincaid's later notes which mysteriously vanished years later, the expedition lasted 3 months. During that time, the team mapped over 20 tunnels and chambers. They found thousands of artifacts, including tablets covered in indecipherable script, metallic tools that resisted corrosion, and murals depicting cities that floated in the sky and people walking alongside beings that glowed with light. But something changed. Smithsonian representatives became increasingly strict about documentation. Photographs were confiscated. Journal pages were redacted. Kincaid was paid handsomely to remain silent, and he did until his death. Soon after the expedition concluded, the location of the cave was stricken from all official maps. Pilots who flew over the supposed area later reported sudden radio silence and interference. Today, that part of the Grand Canyon is off limits, declared a restricted zone by the federal government for reasons never fully explained. The Smithsonian, when contacted decades later, denied any knowledge of the expedition. Kincaid, they claimed, was never an employee. No such cave was ever discovered. All inquiries stopped there. But the Hopi elders tell a different story. For generations, the Hopi have passed down tales of the ant people, pale, tall, thin beings who lived underground and helped the Hopi survive a world-ending catastrophe. These beings were said to be peaceful, intelligent, and in possession of knowledge that came from the stars. Their stories describe vast subterranean cities lit by a source that never went out, where sound traveled strangely and gravity seemed lighter. The Hopi even marked areas of the Grand Canyon as sacred, places they claimed were entrances to these underground worlds, places suspiciously close to where Kincaid made his discovery. Other tribes speak of the Havmusavs, a race of tall, golden-skinned people who flew disc-like ships and maintained a hidden civilization beneath Mount Shasta. And then there are the tales of the giants, beings with red hair and double rows of teeth whose bones were discovered in burial mounds across North America. These skeletons, according to dozens of 19th and early 20th century newspaper reports, were often turned over to the Smithsonian and never seen again. Could these myths and discoveries be threads of the same fabric? Could ancient, technologically advanced civilizations have lived and thrived on this continent long before modern history began to take shape? If so, why erase them? What threatens the narrative so deeply that an institution as powerful as the Smithsonian would allegedly deny its own involvement? And what became of the artifacts that could have rewritten our understanding of civilization, evolution, and human origin? Today, even as satellites map every inch of the Earth, the Grand Canyon holds its silence. Rangers warn hikers not to stray too far from marked paths. Helicopters monitor restricted airspace. And beneath the stone, behind a forgotten door carved into the cliff face, a story waits. Not one carved by time, but one hidden from it. And perhaps someday it will speak again. Kincaid's personal journals, what little remained of them, were discovered decades later in a cedar chest in an abandoned farmhouse in Utah. The pages were yellowed, fragile, and water-damaged, but several entries survived. They describe not only what he saw, but what he felt in that underground city. He wrote of intense dreams while inside the cavern, visions of tall figures communicating telepathically, offering warnings of a future cataclysm. He mentioned hearing humming sounds at night, vibrations that pulsed through his bones and made it impossible to sleep. One entry, dated April 17, 1909, reads, "There is something alive down here, not in the way we understand life, but in the stone itself. Like the cave is aware of us, watching, choosing what to reveal and what to keep hidden." Professor Jordan, too, had reportedly become obsessed. After the expedition, he withdrew from academia, refusing all interviews and rarely seen in public. Whispers of him mumbling in ancient tongues, sketching symbols on his walls, and claiming he had unlocked something humanity wasn't ready for, followed him to his deathbed. His final words, according to the nurse who cared for him, were, "The gate must never be opened again." Still, others have tried. In 1972, a group of hikers from Flagstaff disappeared while attempting to retrace Kincaid's journey. Their campsite was found days later, undisturbed, gear intact, firewood stacked, food uneaten. But the group was never found. No tracks, no signs of struggle. Only one clue, a single photograph left behind, blurry and grainy, showing a shadowy figure standing in a stone corridor, too tall to be human. More recently, drone footage from a team of YouTube explorers captured fleeting images of what appears to be a rectangular opening halfway up a canyon wall, just like Kincaid described. The footage was removed days later. Their channel went silent. To this day, the cave's location remains a mystery, a riddle buried beneath bureaucracy, folklore, and fear. But one thing is clear: if the cave was ever real, then its implications go far beyond archaeology. It would mean history as we know it is a curated narrative, and someone has gone to great lengths to keep it that way. Some researchers believe the cave may not be unique, that similar underground structures exist across the globe, connected through ancient ley lines or geomagnetic anomalies. Places like the tunnels beneath Derinkuyu in Turkey, which descend over 200 feet underground and once housed thousands of people. Or the cave systems of Ecuador, said to contain metallic books written in an unknown language. Or the sealed chambers beneath the Sphinx, rumored to contain the Hall of Records. And then there's the theory of Tartaria, a global civilization wiped from memory. Its architecture, said to be hidden in plain sight in cities across the world, repurposed by later empires. Could the Grand Canyon cave be a fragment of that lost world? A node in a much larger forgotten network? If so, the Smithsonian wasn't acting alone. The suppression of such knowledge would require coordination between multiple governments, agencies, and academic institutions. A silent agreement to guard humanity from truths that might unravel religion, power structures, or our own identity. Why do they hide it? Some say it's to prevent chaos. Others believe it's because the knowledge within these sites, zero-point energy, genetic records, interdimensional portals, could shift the balance of control. That these ancient places aren't just historical, they're technological and active. Kincaid may have walked into one such device, a machine disguised as a city, a vault of knowledge too vast to comprehend, a message from the past, or from something not human at all. And if the cave still exists, untouched, humming beneath layers of stone, then its door is more than an entrance. It's a test, for those brave enough to find it, for those willing to listen, for those who understand that history is not what we're told, it's what we're allowed to remember.